Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason, Howell, and I have an excellent show planned for you. First, we talk with Myriam Joire about Samsung's Galaxy Note 20, the Note 20 Ultra. So much to talk about with Samsung's Unpacked event. Then we talk about the Google Pixel 4a, that basic phone that packs a punch, before we round things out with an excellent conversation with Sara Fischer from Axios about TikTok and about Snapchat and about Instagram Reels and about all of those things combined. There's so much to see, so much to hear on this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from TWiT's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 145, recorded Thursday, August 6th, 2020.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Expressvpn. Expressvpn is an app that reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your ISP can't see the sites you visit. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to expressvpn.com/TNW.
And by Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology's advanced technology center is like no other testing and research lab, with more than $500 million of equipment, including solutions from key partners like VMware. And it's virtual, so you can access it 24/7. To learn more and get insights into all that it offers, go to wwt.com/twit.
And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Well, Wasabi is an enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and faster than the competition, with no fees for egress or API requests and no complex storage tiers. You can start a free trial at wasabi.com and enter code TWIT. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent.
I'm Jason Howell, breaking that tech news. Actually, I'm not breaking anything. It's not us that break the tech news. Not usually anyways. We're just talking to the people that do. Big week for mobile phone news. And as such, reached out to friend of the show, friend of the network, Myriam Joire. MobileTechPodcast.com is your show. Myriam, it's great to have you back. How you been?
Hey. Good to see everybody. Yeah, it's been a weekend. It's not even done. It's what, Thursday? And I still have to do my show today. And then on top of that, like, it just keeps coming. We got new headphones this morning as well. So, it's just, yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's back up a little bit. Samsung had their announcement yesterday morning. That was Wednesday morning. Their Unpacked announcement where they showed off the Galaxy Note 20, the Note 20 Ultra, the Galaxy Z Fold 2, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit, the Galaxy Buds Live, which are what you're talking about, I assume.
No. I'm talking about something else. Oh, yeah.
Whoa,
there's more.
Holy cow.
As I said, there's more.
Holy cow. Okay. All right. Well, maybe when we talk about the Buds Live, I'm curious to know what you're talking about. They also mentioned the Galaxy Watch 3 and then the Galaxy Tab S7 and the S7 Plus. So an insane amount of hardware, all of it bronzed. So, I mean, it looks like a total family of hardware, essentially, that would make you, break your bank if you bought them all. But, we don't have to talk about every single item here, but I'm curious because you have your hands in all sorts of hardware. And, the Note 20 is just, this year's Note series, which every year for the Note series release, I mean, it's always a big deal because the Note phones are just such especially people who love the Note phones, they're a passionate bunch. So what did you think of Samsung's unveiling of the Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra? They now have the 2 different devices. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Are you a big Note fan?
I think Note is a great phone every year, but I think that this year is a bit weird. And I can dive into the details if you want. Did you even mention the Pixel 4a as well? Like, there's all kinds of things happening this week.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about the Pixel 4a a little bit later. Let's focus on Samsung now.
All
but
right.
absolutely,
so the notes,
yes. The Pixel
the notes. So two notes, 20 and 20 Ultra. They're kind of renaming things a little bit. No more plus naming. They're kind of following the S20 naming conventions, and of course, the Ultra is very much the phone, right? It's like everything but the kitchen sink except for headphone jacks, since they're no longer doing that. New improved S Pen features. It inherits most of the camera features of the S20 Ultra and Snapdragon 865 Plus. All the RAM, all the storage, all the features, all the display, everything, right? 120 hertz, Quad HD, everything you want. Basically, take a S20 Ultra, add an S Pen, make it squarer, get a Snapdragon 865 Plus in there, and you're good to go. And for that, I have no issues. I mean, if you want the best that Samsung makes, this is it. If you want a Note, because as you said, they're very loyal Note followers, this is it. However, the Note 20 is a very puzzling phone because last year, for the first time since I think the Note 4, when we got the Note Edge at the same time, we've gotten two Notes. So the Note 10 last year was a smaller Note, but spec-wise identical almost. And so for people wanted a smaller device that can easier to hold in hand with a stylus, with an S Pen, that was it. And so we were expecting the same this year, but then the rumor mill was telling us otherwise. And sure enough, we're getting the Note 20, which is the same size roughly as the Note 20 Ultra, but doesn't have a curved edge display, meaning for some people that's a plus. I prefer flat displays, but you don't get quite those edges, those super thin and slim edges because of that. And the cameras are straight out of the S20, S20 Plus. So, it's downgraded in specs, but it still has the Snapdragon 865 Plus. The big problem with the Note 20 is it really should be a Note 20 Lite because there are other things about it that are kind of egregious for a $1,000 phone. Let me start with the plastic back. I'll pause there and let it settle in.
You can just let that sink in because that was a detail.
I need to breathe for
ease
a second.
into that one.
Just a plastic design for $1,000.
Plastic back. Now the chassis is still metal, the front is still Gorilla Glass, but the plastic back. And then we have the same problem with the display. The display is a 60 hertz 1080p panel on a Note that costs $1,000. I really feel like Samsung is trolling us. Like they're like, let's see what we can get away with. And I think it's a slippery slope. I'm really concerned with this because we're going to start seeing maybe the S30 next year with a plastic back and some revisions. And, when OnePlus made the Nord, I have it right here. They did, I guess it's going to be blurry because of my blurred background. But the Nord has a plastic chassis frame, right? Because it's a $400 phone, $450 roughly dollars. And for that, that's one way they cut costs. It makes sense. But a $1,000 phone doesn't make sense at all. And then who puts a 60 hertz 1080p panel on a flagship in 2020? I guess LG did with the V60. That went really over well when the reviews came out. I'm not sure what Samsung's thinking. I've been discussing this on Twitter with a bunch of other tech journalists, and I think the consensus right now is that A, Samsung's trolling us, B, is this a carrier play, right? So they're saving some money and better for their bottom line, the Samsung is, and at the same time they can pass those savings on to the carriers, especially in the US. Because here's the thing. Nobody wants to spend $1,000 on a phone anymore. I mean, very few people want to because we're in a crisis with the economy right now. People can't afford it, and so the carriers are like, well, we're still going to try to peddle these things, and let's see if we can make money because we're going to sell less of them. So they made a plastic bag. That's all we can think of, and the display, of course. I just want to remind everyone before you yell like it was no big deal. The S20 base, you can now buy for $500-$600 on the market is, it's probably down to that, is got a 120 hertz Quad HD display. Okay. You have to choose between Quad HD and 120 hertz. It's the same with the Note 20 Ultra, but that phone has it. And you can now, the other thing I want to ask is why would you buy a Note 20 Ultra unless you're a Note fan? If you can buy an S20 Ultra at a discount now, or why buy even if you don't care about the display and the plastic bag, why buy a Note 20 when you can buy an S20 or S20 Plus for that. So you really have to want the stylus at this point. And I don't really understand Samsung's strategy. Like Samsung's strategy doesn't make any sense because they didn't cut any other corners. They didn't remove like reverse wireless charging or anything, just a plastic back. And then the display just took a dive. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't get it. It makes me worry about Samsung having lost the plot, and I think they did a while ago, but I wasn't quite able to put my finger on why, and now I think I have it. There it is. They are just commodified to the max, and at this point, they don't care. They're just pumping stuff out.
Well, there's a lot of premium smartphones right now that we're seeing are costing more than people may have expected. And I think some of the blame seems to be going towards the Snapdragon 865 series being a more expensive processor because of the built-in 5G. At least that's been kind of one of the boogeymen that people have been pointing to. Maybe that has something to do with it. I have no idea. I completely agree. It's really interesting that the Note 20 is so stripped down, considering kind of its genesis as being like the best of the best. Now, granted, they have the Ultra to kind of maybe fit into that category. But again, right now is not the best time for a $1,500 smartphone, especially. So then, we'll talk about Google Pixel in a few minutes, but then, looking ahead at Google's plan to take the 5 series and go kind of lesser premium with it, with the 765G processor, kind of taking it down a notch. Maybe that actually makes a lot of sense. It's just comes down to timing. Anything else from the Samsung event that like particularly impressed you, or the complete opposite of that, whatever that is?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think about some of the other stuff?
I mean, look, I think Samsung still makes its best smartwatches short of buying an Apple Watch. So I think the Galaxy Watch 3 I'm excited about. I'm wearing a Galaxy Watch 1 first gen still for a couple of years. I've had it now. Still like rock solid. It doesn't have a scratch on it despite me abusing it all the time. Battery life is still good. Just works like a charm. It's no Apple Watch, but compared to a Wear OS device, it's miles and miles ahead. And I think that Samsung's doing a good job in that in the wearable area. The bean-shaped Galaxy Buds Live are interesting. They kind of pulled a Huawei here because Huawei with the FreeBuds 3 had a non-sealed design for with active noise canceling, which is what they did. And so I haven't heard them. I don't know what they're like. I like the Buds Plus. I thought the Buds were meh. So I think the Buds Live could be pretty good. And again, Samsung, I think, is doing a very good job in its ecosystem and accessory play. I think they're just lacking on the phone business. And back to your $1,000 thing, the Snapdragon price is causing every manufacturer to have issues around pricing phones right now. I'm not blaming Samsung for having to make $1,000 phones because of those chips at the high end. I'm just blaming them for cutting corners on a phone like that egregiously. And but the Snapdragon thing, ultimately, I have 3 now Snapdragon 765 phones on my desk. The 765G, the kind of supposedly mid-range phone, and you can't tell the difference. The only way you can tell the difference is if you're playing some super hardcore games, and I think that's going to be an extremely popular chip. Also, it's better at power management because it has integrated 5G modem. And for those of you who are spec monster people out there, listen to me and take my advice. You don't need an 865. You really don't anymore. And so consider that. The other thing that I want to talk about really briefly about Samsung, and I think to me is the most exciting thing, is that, if you want like the, McLaren or Pagani or whatever it might be, Bugatti of smartphones, you only look no further than the Z Fold 2, right? The Galaxy Z Fold 2 is really showing Samsung flexing its expertise in hardware and design muscle. This is the Fold we always wanted from day one. Last year's Fold now really looks like a prototype when you see this. And I'm super excited about this. This is a Halo product. Like, there's no way people can reasonably afford 2K, right? But it has to happen. This phone needs to exist for this technology to come down in price and become a thing. And a lot of people are going to ask and say, Myriam, it's not a thing. We don't care. I don't want a folding phone. And maybe you don't. And that's okay. But trust me, 5 years from now, this will be commonplace. And a lot of people will be using them at a sub $1,000 price point. And we will take it for granted. And we will look back at the Galaxy the Z Fold 2 as the kind of the spark, right? The previous Fold, too many issues. The Z Flip
many.
was also really good. And I think that, that's a different form factor. I think this tablet turns into a phone thing is finally here with the Z Fold 2.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the changes that they made. I think you're absolutely right. It feels like the first one was beta. There were so many weird, unsharpened edges. I mean, not literally, but, it just really seemed like the planning wasn't quite there. They had all of those issues with dust getting underneath the screen. They came back, but even then, the design with the weird, funky front display that just never looked right and the cutout on the inside, they really kind of tackled those things and tackled them well in this. I'm really excited for that, and I think Leo's going to be ordering that as well. So we're going to talk about, we mentioned a little bit the Pixel 4a. We're going to discuss that. We do have to take a break, but Myriam, you're staying on with us. And we appreciate that. And let's
I have
talk
it in
about
my
the Pixel
pocket right now.
All right, hang tight. Hold on to that Pixel 4a. I should be getting mine today, by the way, so I'm really excited about that. But Mikah, you got this.
Yeah, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Expressvpn. I've talked before about this very strange sort of situation, but it's not all that strange, honestly. You are watching a movie or a TV show, and something happens in it that is, kind of unbelievable, and you go, I don't think that it's possible for a small child to lift up an adult human. And so you go to Google and you start typing in a search for how much can a small child actually lift? And then you realize, I really don't want people knowing that I'm looking up this information. And you might think that, opening up a private browser, a private mode on Chrome or Safari or what have you is going to keep that silly but still strange search from being seen. And that's just not the case, because your ISP can see everything that you are doing online. That's your internet service provider. They can see every single website you've ever visited. That's why even when I'm at home and I'm doing those weird searches, I never go online without using ExpressVPN. Doesn't matter if you get your internet from Verizon or Comcast or any other local ISP. ISPs in the US can legally sell your information to ad companies. ExpressVPN is an app that reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers so your ISP can't see the sites you visit. ExpressVPN also keeps all of your information secure by encrypting 100% of your data with the most powerful encryption available. Most of the time, I don't even realize I have ExpressVPN on. It runs seamlessly in the background, and it's so easy to use. All you have to do is tap one button, and you're protected. ExpressVPN is available on all your devices, phones, computers, even your smart TV. So there's no excuse for you to not be using it. Protect your online activity today with a VPN rated #1 by CNET and Wired. Visit our exclusive link, expressvpn.com/TNW, and you can get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/TNW. expressvpn.com/TNW to learn more. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly and keeping my strange Google searches, to me and me alone.
It's your search and your search alone. Cool stuff. Thank you, Mikah. So, Myriam, you did mention that you have the Pixel 4a. I'm super jealous, although not as jealous as I would be if I didn't know that I'm supposed to get it at some point today, but you already have it. So this is really an interesting counterpoint to what we were talking about with the Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra, because the Note 20 and the Note 20 Ultra, aside from the Z Flip 2, are like on the other end of the spectrum as far as price and premium and all that. The 4a is even less than the 3a, which last year was a bargain at $400. Now it's $350, and this is coming out in a matter of weeks. And I don't know, you've had it for a short bit, or have you had it for a while? What do you think so far?
I just got it on Monday, so I literally right after the embargo lifted, a lot of us second tier media, especially that do video content, got theirs. And It's everything you want a Pixel to be. It's the best Pixel I've used since the original, I think. And that's a tall order since I've used them all. So and dailied them all. So my current I shouldn't say that I've used them all completely. I mean, I have them all. I've used them all. I have not dailied them all because the Pixel 4 was a major disappointment for me. So I switched to OnePlus 8 Pro as my daily driver, which is what I have right now. So if you are wondering what it's like to go from, say, a Note 20 Ultra to a Pixel 4a, I'm here to tell you, because I'm basically going for OnePlus 8 Pro to a Pixel 4a to test it right now. And the takeaway is, yeah, you know what? You can live with this 100%. There's no major compromises. And that's basically scary. And that's basically why I think the phone market is broken, because nobody really needs a $1,000 phone anymore. And I know I'm a hypocrite because I have a OnePlus 8 Pro as my daily right now. But after using phones like a few phones I've used recently, I'm not even getting into the amazing phones from China that you can buy with Google services from like Oppo, Vivo, and Xiaomi that cost like $250 to $450 that are really incredibly good value. Like the OnePlus Nord, which we can't get in the US, which I think is another poster child for the future of phones. The Pixel 4a is basically, if you have today a Pixel 3 or 3 XL, you basically have a Pixel 4a that looks frumpier. That's basically all I'm going to say, because in terms of performance, you really feel that it's faster than the 3A from last year, and it's close to the 4 and 4 XL. It's about the same performance feeling as the 3 and 3 XL. And remember, the 3 XL have 4 gigs of RAM. This has 6. So a lot of your apps dying in the background woes are going to be gone with the 4A. And yes, of course, like the 3A, you lose water resistance and you lose a wireless charging from the big, more expensive flagship Google phones. And I say flagships in quotes because I don't think Google's ever been competitive as a flagship phone maker. They were maybe around the time of the Nexus 6P and the Nexus, the original Pixel. But I think that, maybe even the Pixel 2 series, but the Pixel 3 dropped the ball. The Pixel 4 was a disappointment, I think. And you're going to ask why. And I think the big reason is too expensive, features nobody wants, like Soli, and design that doesn't look good. Like, I love the back of the 4 series, but the front with that forehead is really not attractive. The Pixel 4, as you can see from the photos, you probably have better view than me, is a full screen front with a punch hole. It looks pretty sexy, and it's a $350 phone. So, I mean, what's different from the 3A? You have a better processor. Instead of the 670, you've got a 730 now, which is almost as good as a 765, which itself is close to like an 845 or an 855, which is amazing. Like, not for graphics, but in terms of day-to-day performance. My PC Mark benchmarks on this phone, which I'm reviewing for Hot Hardware right now, are showing me the same exact performance as the Pixel 3 XL. Okay,
that's surprising.
That tells you something. So what's worse than the 3A? So really nothing. The only thing that's worse than the 3A, in my opinion, that's a nitpicky little detail, is that I feel that this unibody plastic that they use isn't quite as refined and well machined. Like, I don't know if it's molded or machined, but the fit and finish and the cut lines on the 3A are higher quality, I feel, that the fit and finish and cut lines on the 4A. And of course, this soft touch black, and it's the only color you can get, and the only size you can get, by the way. That black finish, that small size, is that doesn't feel quite as well made. But honestly, you have to really put them side by side to notice that. This feels a lot like the unibody plastic phones from Nokia did. So plastic in this case, it's not like Samsung, who's using plastic instead of glass, or OnePlus, who's using plastic instead of metal for the midframe, but making them look like the real materials. This is Google, like Nokia back in the day, being unapologetic and saying, this is a plastic phone and it looks good and it feels nice. It's a little smaller than the 3A, a tiny little bit bigger than the iPhone SE 2020. So place that in your head. But with a 5-point-inch display, it's a bigger display than last year's 3A. And it's mostly because of the taller aspect ratio. 1080p, 60 hertz, AMOLED, beautiful display, extremely good viewing angles. It's a little dim in direct sunlight. That would be one knock against it. And then finally, specs, as I said, 730 instead of 670, 6 gigs of RAM instead of 4 gigs of RAM, and base storage is 128 instead of 64. And that's a big deal because even the iPhone SE 2020, which we all know is a great phone to recommend in this price point at $400, doesn't come with 128 unless you spend extra 50 or 100, right? So I think it's a slam dunk. This phone is everything you want in a Pixel with a bit of fat cut off. Like, I wish it had wireless charging. Of course I do. I wish it had IP resistance. Of course I do. The iPhone has both of those things, the SE. And of course I wish it was metal and glass. In an ideal, crazy world, it would be that. But if you can live without those things and add a headphone jack, which the SE doesn't have and which the bigger Pixels, more expensive Pixels don't have, performance-wise, you really are not going to feel any difference than a 3XL. In fact, it's better for RAM. And I would add to that the camera is exactly what you expect it to be. You don't have a telephoto like on the 4, right? You only have one lens in the back. But basically, if you have a Pixel 3 right now, or 3XL, or even a 3A, although that's a stretch because you probably didn't buy your 3A a while back. You've only had it for maybe a year at most. I would say absolutely upgrade to a 4A. Like the 4A is, in fact, they discontinued the 4 today. So I think this is a clear sign of where Google is headed. And I feel like this Google strategy has been this weird thing where at the high end, at the flagship, which aren't really flagship level, they've kind of messed up. But at this price point with the 3A last year and the 4A, they're nailing it. Like this in many ways is better than the Nord. I mean, you don't have the versatility of cameras. You don't have 5G and you don't have that real incredible snappiness of the optimized Oxygen OS experience, but it's still fast enough. Camera is better than the Nord, despite the fact that both have OIS on the main lens. And I don't, other than, you lose 5G as well. But other than that, like it's hard not to sell this phone to people, especially in North America where you can't buy the Xiaomis and Oppos and Vivos that cost nothing. Like, the Poco Phone F2 Pro, $550 for a Snapdragon 865. Well, guess what? The camera falls flat on its face on that phone compared to a Pixel 3A because it has no OIS. So, it depends on your priorities. If all you want is spec monster and you want to play the best games, go buy a Red Magic 5G for $579, right? Like it's sold in the US, it's supported. It's a Snapdragon 865, it's got 5G, it's super fast. But it's a gaming phone. That's all it does, right? It does only one thing well. But if you want an all-rounded phone, the Nord is definitely something you should consider abroad. But if you're in the US, a well-rounded phone right now, this is it. There's nothing else. You can buy you can buy an iPhone SE if you're an iPhone user, but this is the iPhone SE of the Android world in North America right now, in Europe, in the markets where it's sold. Nothing can touch it. $50 less than the 3A on top of that, like with 128 gigs of storage. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I'd make this my daily driver if I wasn't already using an 8 Pro, Yeah.
Well, I know that my wife is going to be getting one of the 4As. She's really ready to upgrade to a different phone, and I was like, you know what, the 4A is going to be perfect for you. So we're gonna go ahead and get her one of those. Myriam, you mentioned your review, Hot Hardware. Any idea when that's going to be hitting ish?
Later this week. I'm hoping early this weekend. I'm just finishing up right now. So a couple of things I want to mention. If you want a bigger phone, which is just as good, wait for the Pixel 4a 5G, which will be a bigger physical size display and a bigger battery and has 5G. I mean, this is all speculation, but I think it's pretty well supported speculation at this point. Also, consider the fact that it might have a second camera in the back. It might have a telephoto. So at that point, it will be very much like a Pixel 4, which would explain why they're stopping selling the 4. And then Snapdragon 765, that amazing sweet spot chip that I think a lot of people are going to find is going to be just all they need for even people like us who are kind of tech nerds, right? And then the other option is to wait for the Pixel 5, which has also been announced alongside the 4a 5G by Google, but we don't know any details. And honestly, based on Google's track record with flagships, in quote, I don't think I want to put too much weight on this. In my opinion right now, if they took this 4a with its great design, because it's a good looking phone, and cranked it up in size, made it metal and glass, kept the headphone jack, added water resistant, added wireless charging, put 3 lenses on it. Like, we need a proper ultra wide. That's the one thing that Nord has that this doesn't, that I really am missing. You have to step back if you want to take that wide shot. You can't do it. And if Google does that for the 5 and then sells it at, since we know it's going to be a Snapdragon 765G, sells that at $650, I'm in. I think at that point they nailed it. But if they don't, if they sell this at $1,000 and don't have an ultra wide and don't, do the right thing, that they know what to do now, I think Google's phone strategy is going to continue being a confusing mess. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone in thinking that either. Myriam Joire, always a pleasure getting you on. mobiletechpodcast.com to listen to Myriam talk more about, I'm sure you're going to be talking a whole lot about all of these stories on your next podcast that you're recording later today.
Follow me on Twitter as well, at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. The headphones I was mentioning, by the way, are the new Sony noise canceling headphones. I believe that, Mikah, you might be wearing the old Sonys right now.
Yes, I
these
am.
These are the WH-1000 XM4 that just came out. And they're basically the same as the 3s, which were, as you know, award-winning, phenomenal headphones. And they add the support for 2 connections, 2 devices, and support for better calls. Those are the 2 things that everybody knocked on the M3s. So the M4s deliver. I think they are now the ultimate noise canceling headphones, especially if you, like me, a bit of an audiophile and you want good sound quality. Bose never really delivered there. And I feel that actually Sony's noise canceling is better in general. So of course I don't have the M4s, but if you have the M3s, all the things you didn't like about them are being fixed with the M4s.
Wow.
And if you want noise canceling headphones in this day and age of having to work at home with, maybe your kids being a little unruly, these are.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
These are something you should be looking at. And so I just want to mention that because it happened this morning. I actually wasn't privy to this. They didn't send me a device or tell me under embargo, but a bunch of reviews came up this morning. There had been rumors and I was like, man, there it is. So, headphones are really important these days. I'd say you'd probably want to save a bit of money on that phone and spend a little bit more money on your audio devices in this crazy pandemic time right now.
That's a good idea. I like that strategy. Myriam, thank you again for joining us today, and hope to talk with you soon. Really
You're
great.
welcome. Thanks so much, guys.
Take care, Myriam. mobiletechpodcast.com for everybody to follow Myriam there. All right, up next, TikTok has been getting a lot of attention from all directions. We're going to try and tackle those directions next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Worldwide Technology. WWT began building their Advanced Technology Center 10 years ago, and it's grown exponentially ever since. It's like no other testing and research lab. The lab contains more than $500 million in equipment from hundreds of OEMs and key partners, ranging from high-tech heavyweights like VMware, Dell EMC, and Microsoft to emerging disruptors like Equinix. WWT is a trusted partner who stays with you over the years. In fact, many of their customers have been with them for over a decade, and that's because they know WWT is where they can go to get the answers that they need to make sure their business runs right. Their ATC is an incubator for IT innovation. It offers so many things. You've got on-demand and schedulable labs like VMware Cloud on AWS, along with hundreds of other labs representing the newest advances in network virtualization. There's software-defined data center, security, digital workspace, multi-cloud architecture, automation, and so many more. You can learn about products before you launch. WWT's engineers actually use these environments so they can quickly spin up proofs of concept and pilots using the sandbox so customers can select the best solutions confidently. And in many cases, this actually reduces concept time from months to weeks, which increases speed to market. They also offer Lab as a Service, which is a dedicated lab space within the ATC. This is where customers can perform programmatic testing using the vast technology ecosystem that WWT has already built. It's virtual, of course, so you can take full advantage of ATC's unique benefits anywhere in the world 24/7. And WWT engineers work in these labs every day. They're beta testing new solutions based on the latest and greatest VMware technologies and building reference architectures and custom integrations as well to help their customers make decisions and see results faster and with much less investment. WWT has launched their new digital platform encompassing the ATC ecosystem. This ecosystem actually creates a multiplier effect of knowledge, speed, and agility anytime, anywhere around the world for their customers. So you can get access to things like articles, case studies, hands-on labs, and other tools that make the difference in today's fast-paced world. To learn more about WWT, the ATC, and become a member of their growing community, go to wwt.com/twit, where you can create an account and gain access to their on-demand labs today. WWT simplifies the complex. That's wwt.com/twit. WWT is delivering business and technology outcomes around the world, and we thank them for their support of the TWiT Network and Tech News Weekly.
All right, folks, you have probably heard by this time about everything that TikTok is going through right now. If you haven't, then maybe you're one of the folks that's just like, I want nothing to do with TikTok. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. And that's understandable. But the fact is, TikTok is a huge social sharing app, and it is incredibly important to quite a few people. And that is why it has been at the center of many a conversation in these past weeks. And when you look online and you try to find someone who can talk about TikTok and talk about it in relation to new products from Instagram, compare it to Snapchat, and talk about the sort of media landscape, I think there may not be a better person to talk to than Sara Fischer from Axios. And we have Sara with us here today, and I'm so pumped. Thank you for joining us, Sara.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let us get into things. TikTok obviously it's been around for a while, and it is kind of a community unto itself. And along with this sort of proliferation of TikTok has been a bit of a concern about what the app is, what it does, and what its sort of existence really is meant for. And I'm hoping that you can give our listeners, our viewers, a little bit of an understanding about why there's even any conversation about the company needing to potentially sell itself to a United States-based company in order to be able to continue to exist in the United States. What is it about TikTok that has led to this mistrust that exists in the first place?
TikTok is an app that's owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. You've probably heard of the three big Chinese companies. That's Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. ByteDance is an up-and-coming big company. And the concern is that people's data from the United States will be shipped off to the Chinese government if they're using TikTok. Now, TikTok has vehemently denied this. They say they do not store data in China. They say that it doesn't get sent to the government. But obviously, there's a lot of national security concern, both from Republicans and Democrats. Now, in a typical administration, you would evaluate these concerns, and then you might kick it over to CFIUS, the Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States, to determine whether or not we should roll back TikTok's acquisition of a U.S. app called Musical.ly, therefore sort of unbundling it from the U.S. You might have national security, law enforcement take a look at TikTok, maybe people from the DHS. You wouldn't probably do an outright ban, but this is the Trump administration. It's the wild, wild west. And so upon news that Trump might ban it, there's a lot of social media rivals that are trying to create their own TikToks within their apps like Instagram, maybe Snapchat. And then there's a lot of rival apps that are just trying to take advantage of the moment, like Byte, Dubsmash. They're all trying to create these like new TikTok rivals that could be the next big thing if it gets banned.
Okay. So I guess that definitely provides a bit of an understanding about, where TikTok comes into the landscape and why there is that concern there. There's obviously been this conversation about Microsoft buying TikTok, and with that has come even more conversation about Microsoft potentially going and buying all parts of TikTok, as opposed to just the parts that kind of touch the United States in such a way that there would need to be a ban if those parts weren't owned by a United States company. But I'm kind of interested in the culture of TikTok and the introduction of TikTok. And I'd love to know, as someone who covers TikTok and similar apps, Snapchat, I see in your stories, and we'll talk about Instagram Reels in a second. Do you have any idea of what it is about this app and this service that has really drawn people in? Do you have any sort of, I don't even know what to call it, like thesis statements, so to speak, about the
yes.
unique...
TikTok is really simple. The layout and format is incredibly conducive to being able to spend hours and hours on it. There are not spaces between posts. There's not clunky hashtags. Everything is embedded on top of the videos. They're completely full screen on your iPhone. So the content is really a focus. And that's totally different than things like Instagram, where between posts you have all these likes and you have all of these hashtags and descriptions. TikTok is just about the video. That's one. Two, TikTok is all video. So when you're scrolling through Instagram, you might get a static image here and there, and that slows down the pace of it. Not the case with TikTok, all video. And then the last thing is TikTok is super authentic. The way the algorithm is built, it's meant to elevate everyday creators. If you do something and you're a nobody, but your video is awesome, millions of people could watch it and millions of people could decide to like it or follow you. That doesn't really happen on Instagram because the algorithm is catered to your own personal preferences. So even if there's really cool content out there, let's say it's someone shooting a basketball hoop while doing a dance. If my Instagram is only catered to my interests, which could be fashion and beauty, I'm never going to see that viral post. And that's why creators traditionally have not loved Instagram. And I think that's why users are getting a little bit sick of it too, because it's not a place where you can be totally authentic and that anyone could build an audience. It's really a place for the most high-end creators. And I think TikTok is just a more authentic, raw footage type of app. And I'm curious to see when Instagram adds its own TikTok-like feature through Reels, if it gets any traction in that atmosphere.
That is what I'm curious about as well. We've seen Instagram in the past very clearly come forth and say, yeah, we added Instagram stories because Snapchat's stories feature was great, and why not copy things that are good that we could add to our app? And so Instagram kind of has had a history of choosing to take on features that it sees from other things and unashamedly kind of steal them and make them their own in some ways, and in some ways not so much. And when I was on Instagram the other day and tapped on the little new button in stories to see this addition, what stuck out to me is the way that this feels like it is just an added on, glommed on sort of third appendage, as it were, that makes it doesn't feel as natural. TikTok seems to be built from the base to be TikTok, as opposed to an app that already does so much with Instagram on its own, and then having this feature added on. And I do wonder how big of a role, and if you could explain to our listeners and viewers as well what duets are, how big of a role do you see duets playing in the success of TikTok versus that? I'm not seeing that on Instagram's new Reels feature, and maybe that was something that I missed. But do you feel like that's an important part of what makes TikTok so successful?
Not really. I think it's one big part of it, sure. But I think what makes TikTok successful is that it is a completely separate app from Instagram and Facebook and everything else. And so it was a place where young users could go and they didn't think their parents were going to be there or their teachers or anyone else, so they could truly be themselves. The problem with embedding TikTok-like features into Instagram is that a lot of people use Instagram. They have over 1 billion users worldwide. And so if you're a young kid and you are posting fun, goofy dances or inside jokes, like, you might not want to do that on your Instagram because your teachers are there and your parents are there. I think that's the biggest problem, number one. I think number two, the other problem is Facebook has toyed with whether or not they would make a separate standalone app for this type of function. They created Lasso, or they bought Lasso a little while back, and they shut it down because it's really hard to grow an app from the bottom up. So what they decided to do instead was, well, let's just try embedding it within our own app and see if the features get adopted. The problem, though, as you said at the top of the show, is sometimes you end up adding so many features that it's confusing and it's overwhelming for the users. I mean, if you go on the main Facebook app these days, there's so much to do between gaming and events and watch and a news tab that people are just overwhelmed by it. And the concern for Instagram is that the same thing's going to happen. You know, they added stories, they've added boomerangs, they added non-chronological algorithmic distribution on its feed. They've added new kinds of filters. I mean, there's so much going on. The concern is that there's going to be so much that users just get lost in the features. Whereas TikTok right now is just super simple. It's just one interface, one click, record your video and go.
Yeah. And I think there are two aspects to when we look at a company and we kind of look at how we feel about that company. What I find interesting is that Facebook, for most of its time, has been a little bit walled off in terms of sharing how it works internally. And despite that, until I would say the Mark Zuckerberg press conference, or not the press conference, but him going to Congress and having to speak, up to that point, the large side of the community, folks outside of the tech space maybe didn't have as much mistrust for Facebook as they did after that hearing took place. Meanwhile, there's been this weird misunderstanding maybe or fear about what TikTok does and what it has to offer. And yet TikTok, as you covered this, TikTok's new CEO says the company will reveal how its algorithms work. Then it came out with more information about what it does and what it doesn't do and what data it shares where. And it's interesting to me how TikTok seems to lay all of this bare and becomes more of an example of what you would want from a social media company from the aspect of privacy and data protection. And Facebook on the other side, being known as a company that is a data broker in the way that folks go on the platform, they pay to have their ads distributed to certain individuals. And I think that does play a role in those of us who are more in the know, kind of understanding the difference between the two. But can you talk just briefly about TikTok revealing its algorithms, how they work, and what that means? Why is that important, and why was that kind of a powerful move by the company?
It's a great PR stunt. I don't buy it for a single second that they're going to be revealing anything that is super impactful. No tech company ever wants to reveal its true algorithms because then there can be very easily gamed. I don't expect TikTok to be much different. Sure, it'll reveal the code if you go to a little transparency center in LA, and it will show you the code that it uses to make content moderation decisions. But at the end of the day, there are so many different things that could change in the code. There are so many different ways that they could apply different reasonings and changes to it that I don't think this is the end-all be-all of transparency. They also said that they would share how their data flow works with regulators. It doesn't mean that they're sharing with users where your data goes. It doesn't mean that they're going to be sharing the full piece of it. I think that was a smart PR stunt. I don't know if it's necessarily TikTok truly opening up the vest, because I don't think any platform can truly open up the vest. Otherwise, you are welcoming bad actors to come in and exploit your platform. But what I do agree with you is that they've been smart about this PR battle in a way that Facebook maybe hasn't. Facebook has a reputation of not being good with user data. Obviously, the Cambridge Analytica scandal did not help with that. At the time, they didn't have as much experience dealing with Congress, so they weren't as forthcoming in the beginning as they should have been. TikTok is coming into this, even though there's a lot of skepticism around their app being tied to the Chinese government, as kind of the more favorable player, because I think a lot of people are just sort of sick of hearing about Facebook's dominance over and over. And so I think the bottom line here is that all these companies have to do a better job about being transparent about content moderation and data and all of that. But really what we're going to need is smart congressional investigations, smart oversight of these platforms by the government if we really want to get down to what they're actually doing. Don't expect these platforms to be forthcoming and show you everything. From a business perspective, they can't.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Sara, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. If folks want to check out your work online and also if they want to follow you, where do they go to do that?
So my Twitter handle is just @Sara Fischer, no H. And I write a weekly media tech column called Axios Media Trends. And if you go to signup.axios.com, you can sign up for it there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us today. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Alrighty, folks, coming up, our stories of the week. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Wasabi is the perfect solution for managed service providers to sell because they can earn more while charging less. It's also 80% cheaper than Amazon S3 and significantly cheaper than on-premise storage. Typically, you can store data in Wasabi's cloud for less than just the annual cost of the maintenance fees on the same amount of on-prem storage. Wasabi's disruptive price and performance model makes buying cloud storage a natural addition. Now, there are two ways to pay. You can pay as you go, or you can pay one time with reserved capacity storage. Wasabi's reserved capacity storage makes buying cloud storage a natural addition to your on-prem storage. If you're thinking about buying more hardware storage, compare the price against 5 years of reserved capacity storage. You can purchase cloud storage in 1, 3, or 5-year increments and achieve greater discounts for term and capacity. With Wasabi, security is often even greater than on-premise storage. It provides 11 nines of durability. This means on average you'd lose one file every 649,000 years. That's about how long I expect to live, so that's good. Hosted in premier Tier 4 data center facilities that are highly secure and fully redundant, Wasabi is secure by default, and all data stored in the Wasabi cloud is always encrypted at rest, even if the requesting party doesn't specify encryption. Wasabi follows industry best security models and design practices. You can access control mechanisms such as bucket policies, and access control lists can be used to selectively grant permissions, and your data will be immutable, preventing data from being erased or altered, and you'll be protected from hackers, malware, and frankly, yourself. Wasabi has active integrity checking where all objects stored are checked for integrity every 90 days. It's also HIPAA, FINRA, and CJIS compliant. Wasabi is not just highly secure, it's disruptive technology that's turning the industry on its ear. It's storage that's 80% cheaper and up to 6 times the speed of the industry leader. Calculate the savings for yourself and start a free trial of storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click the free trial link, and enter code TWIT, T-W-I-T. Join the movement and migrate your data to the cloud with confidence. Go to wasabi.com and make sure to use the offer code TWIT. Thank you so much to Wasabi for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, Jason Howell. Tell me why I should stop using my wireless charging.
I mean, you could continue using it. I'm still on the fence. I have a wireless charger for my Pixel 4, and I feel like I was kind of late to the wireless charging game. Like phones have been, especially top tier phones have had wireless charging for quite a few years now. And I only really got a wireless charging pad for the first time, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I was never super convinced by wireless charging anyways. I honestly don't mind just plugging in a phone, although it is nice to just set it on a pad and forget about it. But Eric Ravenscraft, who has been on the show in the past, he writes for 10, he wrote a piece that is definitely worth taking a look at about the inefficiency of wireless charging. I feel like we already know that wireless charging is less efficient than plugged-in charging. There's certain energy that is just lost in the process, right? If you're directly plugged in, the majority of that energy goes into the phone, charges up the battery faster. If it's wireless charging, a lot of that energy gets lost to heat. Well, he tested multiple wireless chargers with his Pixel 4, along with a high-precision power meter to measure power consumption. He actually found that wireless chargers use 47% more power than wired. So because of that lack of efficiency, over time, what does that mean if every single night you're placing it on the charger and 47% that could be saved is being just wasted essentially? You're paying for that cost. Not only are you paying for it out of your pocket, maybe it's not a lot in and of itself, like one charging, but I mean, anything times X amount of, hundreds of times a year, let's say, it all adds up, right? But aside from just the monetary cost, what is the cost on infrastructure, on the ecosystem, on environment, societal cost? If everybody was to say be wireless charging, using wireless chargers for their devices, what kind of impact would that have? And that's kind of the overarching point of his piece is, hey, look at this. This is actually a considerable enough number to take a second look at. Is the potential broadening of this technology to a point to where it directly impacts things like the environment? Is that worth the time it takes to just plug in your phone instead of placing it on a charger? He makes the point that if a house has 3 wireless chargers in it and you're charging 3 devices, it could waste around the same power that it actually takes to charge a single phone completely. And so you take that and you multiply it out, and then you talk about the infrastructure behind the scenes that's helping to support that. And I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment to kind of think about this in a different way. And it really made me kind of look at my wireless charger and be like, I honestly just kind of don't care whether I plug it in or set it on the pad. I guess I've gotten used to it over the past year, especially because I have the Pixel Stand, which is Google's wireless charger for the Pixel 4. And so it does things where when you place your phone on it, it switches the phone to a different mode. So it has this nice a bunch of my photos kind of cycle through in a slideshow and everything. And, it has some extra assistant kind of features. So it makes it usable in other ways. But honestly, I don't need it. Half the time I end up turning off those pictures anyways, because if my kids are in here at bedtime and they see them, it's an instant distraction. It's no, it's bedtime. It's not look at pictures time. I have to turn off anyways. That's a me problem, I realize. But anyways, it was just a great way to kind of take a look at this and be like, okay, well, what is the impact here? But I don't know. Are you a big fan of wireless charging? Have you been using it for years?
So I started out as a person who was annoyed by the concept of wireless charging, as I would always call it, because to me, wireless charging, I used to feel this way. So me then would say, I don't like that they call it wireless charging. If it was really wireless charging, it would mean that I could walk around with my phone not tethered or stuck to one place, and it would charge my device. And I was annoyed by that idea of it's still having to put down my phone on a thing or hold my phone against a thing, and that was wireless. But then the iPhone got wireless charging, and I started to use it, and I started to understand the benefit of it, especially at night when I go to lay down and I just want to drop my phone somewhere and charge it, or when I am at my desk and I want to put it on the wireless charger, or in my car where I've got a dock that has wireless charging built in. In those places, I really like wireless charging. But I didn't realize the energy impact that was there, or the energy inefficiency, as it were. The idea that, plugging it in and getting more of the charge, I do try to be very conscious about that. When I move into a place, even if it's a rental unit, I always switch out any bulb that I can with LED bulbs instead. I try to make sure that, lights that aren't being used are turned off, that the oven is used when it needs to be and not when it's not, and those kinds of things. And so I am pretty conscious about that, but I'd never really considered the amount of energy that gets lost to heat and what that means in the end for how that affects the internal temperature of a home. You know what I mean? On its own, it's a small thing, but when there are already other ways that heat might be seeping into your home in the summer, and you are running AC, which is another electricity gobbler, those things start to make a difference. And so putting heat into the home and at the same time paying more to have heat put into the home than goes into, than goes into the phone, all of those things start to sort of make me pause and go, okay, that 3-spot dock I have next to my bed with my Apple Watch, my iPhone, and my AirPods case, maybe I need to switch that out for a dock that has, 2 cords and it's or 3 cords, and one of them is for the Apple Watch. But the problem is there's also a future that I think we're getting close to where ports go away entirely. And instead of the iPhone having a port on the bottom, it's portless and you have to charge it that way. So I hope that efficiency is something that these companies continue to look at and make it even better. But yeah, this is just kind of like an eye opener for me, honestly, because I just had not considered it at all before.
I mean, the last point that you brought up, as far as like the direction of the industry moving to no ports, I think by and large that's a big point of the piece, right? That's a big part of why this piece is kind of important to look at. If that is the direction that we are going, and there is a future where, let's say, not, probably not the majority of phones, but a large percentage of the phones are wireless charging only, then we are advancing closer to the point to where there's a critical, mass of devices out there that are inefficiently bleeding electricity and the resources that are required to drive that. When I think about, our yard, and we've got, a little watering system for some of our plants and everything. If I think about one of those hoses leaking 47% of the water that passes through it, like, I'm going to patch that. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to patch that because it's wasteful and it's expensive. And over time, that's just irresponsible to know that that's there and not do anything about it. And so then when I think of it through that lens, and I'm like, well, why is it any different with electricity? When electricity, does kind of bleed resources from the earth, and we're all talking about kind of looking at the many ways that we kind of take that for granted and changing our behavior. And if one small change I can make is to not use my wireless charger, hey, maybe that's a good choice to make. It might, at the very least, it might just make me feel better about my decision.
Exactly. And that feels good to feel better about the decisions.
Yes.
Oh boy.
All right, what you got?
So I wanted to talk about this because this isn't the first time that companies have said the rules that Apple has in place for their App Store have gotten in the way of our ability to do business there. And the latest company is Microsoft. xCloud is Microsoft's online streaming game platform. So Stadia, is it Stadia or Stadia? Stadia, thank you. Stadia, you say tomato, I say tomato, I kid. Stadia and xCloud are both the same kind of thing. It is a way to play games where you can have a device like an iPhone or some other device that is not super high powerfully charged, and the super high powerful charging happens or processing happens on the server, and you just do the streaming to your local device. It's a brilliant idea because it means that there could eventually be beautiful, outstanding, amazing games with incredibly powerful AI built in and complex worlds that get generated and all this thing. This is a great idea as a concept. And so you'd think that, you'd want to have this everywhere. Well, Microsoft is currently testing xCloud, and it was originally testing xCloud on both iOS and Android. But in order to do testing on iOS, you have to be part of what's called the Test Flight program. And what Test Flight is a beta testing service that Apple provides that makes it super simple for you to sign up for betas. So I use Test Flight all the time because I've got plenty of app developers who will send me a Test Flight invite to check out their apps before they actually launch on the App Store, and in some cases check out early versions of an update to their app that'll come later. And so I get an invite in my mail application. I tap on it. It opens up in Test Flight. I can install the build, and then it makes it very easy to send feedback to that developer and get information to them about what went wrong with their app or what's working with their app, et cetera. And then all of those builds can be managed within the Test Flight application. But the problem for folks as big as Microsoft is that Apple limits Test Flight invites or actual, not invites, but active users to 10,000. And Android does not have that limit, is my understanding. So because you can only have 10,000 testers And because of the way that Microsoft is trying to iterate on xCloud and continue to improve it, all of the rules that are in place with Apple's test flight makes it difficult. So, for example, there's a developer that makes this excellent app. It's called Nudge It. It's a budgeting app for iOS. And I got, an early look at a version of Nudge It that will be available in iOS 14 that has widgets, which have just come to iOS and iOS 14. And that will launch probably in about a month, a little bit over a month. iOS 14 will. And there is now a new version that he wants to push out as part of his beta. But that beta that goes out to test flight users also has to be approved by Apple. So it's not as easy to say, I've got a new version of the software. Here it is. We're rapidly testing and iterating, because everything still has to be approved by Apple before it gets pushed out, whether it be beta or the actual app in the App Store. So all of that is to say that it is kind of difficult to do beta testing on iOS. And so Microsoft is no longer doing the preview version of xCloud on iOS. Only Android users will continue to continue to get to use xCloud with Android. And that could also mean that the final version of xCloud is not going to be on Apple's platform. Stadia. Stadia is a streaming service that is available on Android, but is not currently available on iPhones and iPads. And so Google has obviously had issues with launching the actual version of its software, much less betas, to its users. And so it could be that we don't see this from Microsoft either. That part is unclear, but at the very least, it is difficult for Microsoft to continue testing its software on Apple's iOS. And so that's kind of a bummer. Not for me personally, because I'm not a gamer at all. And so this doesn't affect me. But to see this and know that, this brilliant idea of not having to have, to me, this opens up accessibility. And I don't mean that in the traditional sense of the word, but the idea that more people who maybe can't afford a $400, $500, $600 console to be able to play games with, they're able to once a year or once every couple of years invest in a phone that is, somewhat up to snuff. And then to be able to play these games because they can't invest in also a console, but they want to play the games. And so they get to do that on that device that they spent that much money on. I think this is a brilliant idea, and the possibilities there are really cool. And so it is a bummer to see this, and a disappointment to see that, Microsoft is having trouble testing it. And as a person who enjoys my Apple products and enjoys what Apple does as a company in terms of all other aspects of its business and its drive for user privacy, we keep seeing these instances that maybe there's the argument to be made that it is not an antitrust violation, but when a company is already being looked at so heavily for antitrust concerns, and you continue to see these stories that could be added to that argument, that's also where I get concerned.
Yeah. It's a bummer, right? Like you said, I think you said exactly that. It's a bummer. But Microsoft's kind of strategy with this next console hinges very heavily, it seems like, on Game Pass and on its xCloud service to allow just that, right? Like if you've got the money for the console and you want to go the console route, great, you can. If you don't, or you just prefer not to, you don't have to, because Game Pass with xCloud is going to back you up. And that really ultimately means, playing your Xbox games that you would play on the console more or less anywhere you want, with the asterisk in possibility of being Apple devices or iOS devices anyways. I don't know about Macs, but iOS devices. And that's a really big asterisk to include on this, because I think cloud game streaming is really coming into its own. It's certainly being embraced more. And I think that only continues as speeds and improve, and connectivity and the kind of the spread of broadband wireless around the country and around the world. Like as that happens, it supports this ecosystem even more. It would be really unfortunate for iOS devices to miss out on that. And I would think users of iOS devices, like the Venn diagram of iOS device users and those who might want to try a service like this, I'm sure there's a lot of crossover there. So whether it comes out of the gate not supporting it, gosh, I have to imagine at some point it does. Like, I can't imagine Apple just being like, nope, we're not going to do this really cool forward-thinking thing that, totally has mobile in mind, but we're not going to do it on our phones. Have to imagine, but I guess anything's possible. It's a bummer that the setup to get there is what we're seeing right now.
I agree. Yeah. Sigh.
Sigh, deep sigh. Well, we'll see. Like I said, I would have a hard time believing that it won't come eventually. But when is that? Who the heck knows? That's it. We've reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Thanks so much for watching and joining us as you do each and every week. We publish this show every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe, of course, and we hope that you do. Subscribe to audio or video or jump out to YouTube. All the links you need to do that are on the page, twit.tv/TNW.
You can also follow us on social media. That's at Twit on Twitter, at twit.tv on Instagram, and we just talked about it today, at Twit Talk on TikTok. If you want to send me a tweet or you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Mikah Sargent at pretty much all of the places. So you can go check me out in anywhere, pretty much at Mikah Sargent. Hands on iOS is another show that I do, and I've got an episode coming out later today that shows you how to kick this silly, thin, uncomfortable, easy to lose, easy to break Siri remote to the side and use your iPhone or your app. Oh, it's not on my wrist. Oh, iPhone or your Apple Watch. Oh, not mine. Where did it go? It's currently sending heat.
It's on a wireless charger, isn't it, Mikah?
Exactly. It's sending heat into the. No wonder why it's so hot in here. I've got my Apple Watch charging. To use your Apple Watch or your iPhone as the remote for your Apple TV instead. What about you, Jason?
You can find me on Twitter at Jason Howell. Definitely check out Hands on Android. We certainly talked about a lot of Android on today's show. So if you like that stuff, check out my Android show where I show you tips and tricks on how to use your Android device better. This week, I dived into managing reminders on the Android platform because, well, we started distance learning a couple of weeks ago, and I'm leaning heavily into reminders because it's the only way I can survive right now. Otherwise, I get lost in all the details. So twit.tv/HOA, and you can find all the episodes there to help you improve your usage of your own Android device. Hope that you do that. Big thanks to everyone who helps us do this show each and every week. Of course, John and Burke at the studio. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And thanks to you, yes, you, for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, host at TWiT TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. It's my show, Hands on Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.